Before stadium food meant nachos, hot dogs, giant pretzels, and one suspiciously expensive soda, ancient Rome had the Colosseum, where tens of thousands of people packed into a stone arena to watch violence, politics, animals, celebrities, executions, and, yes, snacks. Because the Colosseum was not just a ruin, not just a postcard, and definitely not just the place where movie gladiators yelled dramatic things at the sky. In its prime, it was one of the most intense entertainment machines ever built. It was a sports arena, a political theater, a social map, a death stage, a food court, and a giant reminder that Rome knew exactly how to turn spectacle into power. And if you were a regular Roman walking toward the Flavian amphitheater on a game day, you were not just going to see a fight. You were going to spend the day inside an empire's version of the Super Bowl, county fair, public punishment, wildlife documentary, celebrity boxing match, and street festival, all at once. The Colosseum opened in 80 AD under Emperor Titus, built by the Flavian dynasty, after Nero's enormous private palace had made Romans very angry, for very understandable reasons. Nero had taken public land and turned it into luxury for himself. The Flavians took that space and gave the people an amphitheater, which was a brilliant political move, because nothing says, "I am not like the last guy," quite like replacing a dead emperor's private pleasure lake with a giant building where the public can watch other people have a much worse day than they are having. The games were often free to attend, but that did not mean they were casual. You still needed a ticket, usually a small token that told you where to enter and where to sit. The Colosseum was not first-come, first-served chaos. It was organized chaos, which is a very Roman phrase if there ever was one. Your seat told the entire world who you were. The emperor and the Vestal virgins had the best views. Senators sat close to the arena. Wealthy equestrians sat above them. Ordinary citizens were higher up. Poor citizens, women, and enslaved people could be pushed toward the upper levels, where the view was worse and the climb was basically a workout plan forced on you by social hierarchy. So before the show even started, the building reminded everyone of the Roman order. You did not just watch the empire, you sat inside it, arranged by rank. And yet the engineering was astonishing. The Colosseum had numbered entrances, stairways, corridors, and passageways that could move huge crowds in and out with a speed that modern stadiums would still envy. Those exits were called vomitoria, not because Romans were constantly throwing up from too much garum and questionable wine, but because the corridors rapidly discharged crowds into or out of the seating areas. The word sounds disgusting to modern ears, but the design was practical. Thousands of people could flood in, find their places, and settle in for a long, hot, loud, uncomfortable day of entertainment. And it really could be hot. The Colosseum had a massive awning system called the velarium, worked by trained sailors to cast shade over parts of the crowd. Imagine going to a football game and the roof is operated by the Navy. That is the kind of wonderfully overbuilt Roman solution we are dealing with. Once you were inside, the day had a rhythm. The morning often belonged to animal hunts or venationes, where exotic animals from across the empire were displayed, hunted, killed, or used in staged scenes. Lions, leopards, bears, ostriches, elephants, and other animals could appear as proof that Rome's reach was not just military, but geographic. If an animal could be dragged from a distant province to the arena floor, then Rome could turn the whole world into a prop. Around midday came the executions, often of criminals, prisoners, or people with no power in Roman society. This was the part of the day that some elites might skip to go eat, because apparently even ancient aristocrats understood that watching a person be publicly killed can interfere with lunch. Then in the afternoon came the gladiators, the main event, the part everyone remembers. Gladiators were not simply disposable meat, even though they could die violently. Many were trained, promoted, followed, and admired. Some became famous. The crowd had favorites. People argued, people bet, people carved names and images. The arena was a machine for attention, and the crowd was not politely observing history. They were yelling, sweating, eating, gambling, judging, and reacting like sports fans everywhere, except the stakes were sometimes literally life and death. And because a day at the Colosseum could last for hours, people needed food. This is where the whole place starts to feel weirdly familiar. Archaeologists have found evidence that spectators ate fruits, nuts, olives, figs, grapes, cherries, blackberries, walnuts, and other snacks. There were also signs of meat and shellfish. Around the arena, vendors likely sold food, drinks, souvenirs, and the ancient Roman equivalent of, "You absolutely do not need this, but you are at the event, so now it costs more." Ancient spectators were not sitting there in noble silence. They were snacking. They were dropping pits, shells, bones, and crumbs. They were turning mass violence into an all-day outing, which is uncomfortable, but also very human. A Roman father probably complained about snack prices with the exact same emotional intensity as a modern dad discovering what a bucket of popcorn costs at a stadium. One snack that fits beautifully into this world is Roman stuffed dates. The ancient cookbook associated with Apicius gives a simple recipe. Remove the pits from dates, stuff them with nuts, pine nuts, or pepper, roll them in salt, cook them in honey, and serve. That is it. Tiny, sweet, salty, sticky, spicy energy bombs. And honestly, that makes perfect stadium sense. Dates are portable. Nuts are rich. Honey makes everything feel luxurious. Salt wakes up the sweetness. Pepper gives heat. These are not modern nachos, but they belong to the same emotional category. Something small, intense, and snackable that keeps your hands busy while the crowd around you loses its collective mind. Long pepper was especially prized in Roman cooking, with a sharper and more aromatic heat than regular black pepper. Add it to dates and honey, and you get a food that is both dessert and dare. It is sweet enough to feel indulgent, salty enough to make you want another bite, and peppery enough to remind you that Roman flavor combinations were often bolder than people expect. Ancient Roman food was not just bland bread and olives. Romans loved contrast. Sweet and savory, honey and vinegar, fish sauce and fruit, pepper and wine, herbs, nuts, cheese, oil, garum, and spice all showed up in combinations that can feel surprising today. The stuffed date is a perfect little example of that world. It is small, but it tells you a lot. It tells you that Roman snack food could be practical, luxurious, and a little strange all at once. The Colosseum also worked because it made the crowd feel included in imperial generosity. Emperors and elites sponsored games to win popularity, display wealth, honor the dead, celebrate victories, or distract the public from everything that was going wrong, which is a strategy governments have never completely abandoned. Sometimes gifts were thrown to the crowd, or tokens could be distributed that could be exchanged for prizes. Food itself could be part of this generosity. A public spectacle was never just entertainment. It was a transaction. The people gave attention, loyalty, noise, and approval. The powerful gave games, shade, grain, gifts, and blood. Even the seating plan was political. The emperor could look out and see Rome arranged in layers, from the richest and most honored down to the least powerful. The crowd could look down and see animals from conquered lands, fighters trained for display, criminals punished in public, and imperial power made visible. And in the middle of it all, someone was eating a honeyed date. That is the part I cannot get over. The Colosseum is remembered as monumental and brutal, but it was also sticky, noisy, crowded, smelly, hungry, and deeply social. People played games while waiting. They carved graffiti. They flirted, argued, sweated, complained, cheered, and probably tried to protect their snacks from being knocked out of their hands by the person next to them. The arena floor gets most of the attention, but the stands were their own world. Imagine the smell: dust, bodies, animals, blood, hot stone, wine, smoke, oil, fruit, nuts, sausages, honey, and whatever someone carried from home wrapped in cloth. This was not the clean museum version of Rome. This was Rome alive, which means Rome loud and unpleasant and fascinating. The food tells us that spectators did not experience the games as isolated moments of drama. They experienced them as a day out. You arrived, found your seat, watched animals in the morning, maybe ate fruit or bread, endured or avoided the executions at midday, came back for the gladiators, bought something sweet, argued about a fighter, shouted with strangers, and left through the corridors with thousands of other people. In that sense, the Colosseum feels surprisingly modern. We still build arenas where seating reflects money and status. We still sell snacks at inflated prices. We still turn athletes into celebrities. We still use halftime and spectacle and lighting and crowd noise to make events feel bigger than the thing actually happening on the field. We still let food become part of the memory. Ask someone about a baseball game and they might remember the hot dog as clearly as the score. Ask someone about a Roman game, if we could, and maybe they would remember the gladiator. But maybe they would also remember the honey dates, the olives, the wine, the heat, the dust, the crush of people, or the annoying man behind them yelling for the wrong fighter. That is why food history matters here. It pulls the Colosseum down from marble legend and puts it back into human hands. A stuffed date is not as dramatic as a gladiator duel, but it is easier to understand. We know what it means to want something sweet during a long event. We know what it means to snack while watching something intense. We know what it means for public entertainment to become a place where food, money, class, and identity all mix together. Of course, the moral distance is enormous. Modern stadiums do not usually schedule public executions between the morning animal show and the afternoon main event. But the social mechanics are recognizable enough to be uncomfortable. Rome understood crowds. Rome understood spectacle. Rome understood that food makes people stay longer. Rome understood that a full audience is not just a collection of individuals, but a political force that can be excited, pleased, distracted, and controlled. The Colosseum was a building made of stone, concrete, and engineering, but it was also made of appetite. Appetite for food, appetite for status, appetite for violence, appetite for belonging, appetite for being part of the event everyone would talk about the next day. And Roman stuffed dates fit that world perfectly because they are tiny little contradictions. They are sweet but salted, luxurious but portable, simple but spiced, domestic but public. They could sit beside sausages, pastries, olives, nuts, wine, and fruit as part of an ancient snack culture that feels much closer to our own than we might like to admit. The weirdest thing about attending the Colosseum is that it was both horrifying and ordinary. From our perspective, the violence is the headline. From a Roman spectator's perspective, it was also a day off, a social occasion, a chance to see friends, show status, cheer favorites, eat something good, and feel connected to the power of Rome. That is what makes the history so unsettling. People rarely experience their own culture as strange. They experience it as normal. A Roman spectator did not walk in thinking, "I am participating in a morally horrifying symbol of imperial domination while eating honeyed dates." He probably thought, "I hope my seat is decent. I hope the shade reaches my section. I hope the games are good. And I hope these snacks are worth what I paid." And maybe that is the lesson hidden inside the food. Snacks make even extraordinary places feel normal. They turn spectacle into routine. They let a crowd sit through hours of beauty, terror, boredom, excitement, and cruelty without ever fully leaving the comfort of ordinary appetite. So the next time you walk into a stadium and smell fried food, sugar, salt, beer, and hot pavement, remember the Colosseum. Remember the numbered ticket, the social ladder carved into stone, the sailors working the awning, the morning animal hunts, the midday executions, the afternoon gladiators, the fruit pits in the drains, the nuts, the olives, the sausages, the pastries, and the dates stuffed with pepper and nuts, rolled in salt, and cooked in honey. Ancient Rome did not invent stadium food exactly as we know it, but it understood the basic truth perfectly. If you want people to sit together for an entire day and watch a spectacle, you had better give them something to eat. And if you want them to remember the power of the empire, make sure the snack is sweet, salty, sticky, and just a little bit dangerous.